Hello, Wendy.
Hello, Jane.
Welcome to Love Letters, Life, and Other Conversations. It's feeling more and more like spring here every day.
Oh, that's so nice. I can't wait. It's very much winter here, but I'm pretty sure that the next time we see each other, we'll be in the same room.
I know. And with Miss Amelia as well.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm so excited too.
Thank
How
you.
old is Amelia, Wendy? Is she 7?
She's 8. She just turned 8 in January.
She's 8. Okay, so the reason I ask that is somewhere between the age of 7 and 9, I wrote this poem that we are going to use as our springboard today.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to hear.
It's so funny. I remember sitting on my bed with my little exercise book and my pen or pencil, I can't remember whether it was a pen or a pencil, writing this poem. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I have never, ever forgotten the words. Never.
So beautiful.
Shall I recite it and then we can talk about it?
Would you please?
I have a friend. Yes, she's a friend, for she has told me so. I tell my friend, yes, very big things that no one else would know. And if you had a friend like mine, then you'd know what I say. For some friends you can't even trust, and some are just okay. But when you have a friend like mine who never lets you down, then you should care about this friend, for they are rarely found.
Oh, it's so good. Thank you for sharing that.
It's so immature and
not for an 8-year-old.
And simple. But, I remember writing that and thinking, I do not have this friend. I was writing that in hope that one day I would have a friend like that.
A letter to your future self.
A letter to my future self. Really, that was. But I remember thinking, wouldn't it be nice to have someone that could be all these things to you at, I think I was probably 8 or 9. I'm remembering that it was around 8 or 9 because I started piano at 9, and I know that I wrote it the same week that I had my first piano lesson.
Oh, okay. That's so helpful on so many levels. Firstly, Amelia has not started piano lessons. And sometimes you think, oh gosh, if she didn't do this when she was 3, we've completely missed the boat. So thank you for that.
No. Oh, no. No. Well, I went through that whole sort of, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, up to grade 12 with piano. And I did the same with flute and double bass and singing and any instrument I could get my hands on, really. But in Australia, we call it the embody, I think it is. And it's a series of exams, and it's excruciating for young children.
Okay.
And
sounds awesome.
Did you ever do those sort of music exams?
I didn't. Well, I went to a private school that my parents were involved in the teaching staff, and it was pretty far away from our house. So we spent a lot of time in the car going back and forth to school, and didn't participate in very many extracurricular activities.
Okay. I went through that system where, I remember the piano exams were always in the dead of the winter. And I remember warming up my fingers in front of the heater in the room that you sat in to wait to go into the, there was like an adjudication, 3 testers who would listen to you play your pieces. And I would feel physically sick for days beforehand and on the day physically sick as well.
I'm sure.
So when my children learnt instruments, I didn't make them do any of the exams. I just let them do it for the joy of it. And they all love music now because they weren't forced, to
Right.
and be graded. It was a passion rather than a chore. And I found piano a real chore in the end.
That's really interesting because for Amelia, it's not so much the assessment of how far you've expanded your skill. She doesn't like when people are looking at her.
Oh.
So she's rehearsed for things, little preschool graduation or something at school around her classmates. It's totally fine. But when the day comes to walk out on stage and there are 50 parents, completely shut down, like she's just not available for that at all.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that that's one thing she's wanted to take ballet, but she, trying to find someone that will allow us to learn without having the recital, because the recital is also a way of grading the teacher. And so in a lot of programs, it's required, but because she doesn't want anyone looking at her, she's not interested in doing that. So I think it is high time that some things change for the way that is going to get the outcome that we want, which is children that love music, children that love, lots of things, that without having it to be so compartmentalized or just the way that it's always been done. Even though some people have success with that, it's not for everybody.
No. And just like friendships with little people, there's not a prescription and there's not a right or a wrong way to do it. And I've always thought that it was such a funny thing that I can still remember this poem from my childhood, and the fact that I wrote a poem about a person that didn't exist.
Right. And did you create her based on experiences that you were having or experiences that you weren't having?
Experience that I wasn't having, that I wanted to have.
And isn't that what we're still doing in our 50s?
Exactly.
We're creating these lives that we want.
Yes.
And
that's so true.
Yeah, I love this conversation. I love this poem because of what is happening to us as adults, and because we have this beautiful visual in Amelia of we can say like, oh, what was I really thinking? Was I really that evolved? Yeah. But when you look at Amelia and meet her and talk to her, you say, oh, yeah, I absolutely did that when I was 8 or 9 years old.
That was me on the end of the bed, writing in my little notebook. I think it's really interesting, the first line, I have a friend. Yes, she's a friend, for she has told me so. I must have been so desperate for this person.
Gosh, it's beautiful.
I tell my friend, yes, very big things that no one else would know. I mean, what secrets could I possibly have had? If you had a friend like mine, then you'd know what I say. So I clearly understood that some people did have this connection with other people, and I wanted it. For some friends you can't even trust, and some are just okay. So I saw that around me.
Right. And even like the kids you grew up with, maybe you were best friends as, younger children, but then as you grew up, you just saw different things about them, or you just developed different likes.
Yeah. I think I've told you this before. I have always been a very shy person, but not shy if I have a job to do. But as an 8 or a 9-year-old, I didn't have a job to do. So all I could do was write about this person that I wanted.
Oh, I love it. And I know that we have chatted a little bit about this poem before, and I'm remembering what your friend said when you shared this poem, that you are the friend that you were writing about. Like you are that friend to yourself.
That's right. I'd forgotten that we'd had that conversation.
It's so, but and how beautiful and true. And again, flash forward to the lives that we are living now as women. And we've talked before about this permission slip that we give ourselves to become and enjoy and do the things that really make our hearts swell and have an impact on other people. And you actually had all of that as an 8 or 9-year-old. Like what happens between that time and this time that makes us have to become again who we knew ourselves to be when we were young?
Yes. The other extraordinary thing about this funny little poem that's always been with me
That I love
is, I know it's written down somewhere in a notebook that may well be, in the attic space, roof space. Well, it could be here, but I don't think it's here. I think it was in the attic or roof space in my mum and dad's house in Melbourne. So I haven't seen that handwritten in my writing. I can close my eyes and I can see it because I know what my writing was like. But I have not seen that for probably 45 years.
it's written on your heart.
It's embedded. I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten the lines. Once or twice during maybe my late teens or early 20s, I used to get two of the lines mixed up, and then I'd say, oh no, actually that one comes first and then that one second. But it's always been with me, always.
I love that. I love that when you say something like, oh, do you need to look up the recipe? And you say, oh no, I know it by heart. Like, I love what that means. It's on your heart. Like there's, of course, it's in your memory and your recall, but it's something that was so true for you and so important and so valuable that you hid it in two places.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it must have been. I don't think, I know how valuable and how much it meant to me for the mere fact that I'm 57 and I can still recite it.
Right. What happens after some are just okay? What are the next lines, please?
Have a friend if she's a friend, for she has told me so. I tell my friend, yes, very big things that no one else would know. And if you had a friend like mine, then you'd know what I say. For some friends you can't even trust, and some are just okay. But when you have a friend like mine who never lets you down, then you should care about this friend, for they are rarely found. Now,
you're a genius.
Did I have someone or something that happened that made me think just okay?
Perhaps.
Did I have someone that was untrustworthy, that I'd told a secret to and that betrayed me? I don't recall. But it's all the ingredients there, isn't it?
Oh,
it's everything that we all want in a friendship.
Yes. Yes, it is. And that we don't assume that that's the way it should be all the time. Like your assumption in the end of that poem is that it's rare.
Yeah. Yes.
You're very profound, child prodigy.
Oh yes. Terribly. No, I just think it is incredible that a little kid
Yes.
write something and then it stays with them all their life. And Wendy, I told someone a couple of years ago when I was sharing that poem that I had never given that poem to anyone. So 8-year-old or 9-year-old Jane, so let's think of Amelia.
Yes.
Carried that poem with her for, 49 years, searching for a person that could live up to the ingredients in that simple rhyme.
And that's interesting because how many of us, what things am I carrying around that were conceived as a child that I'm looking for evidence of as an adult? So sometimes that happens and it's a beautiful, profound thing. And sometimes that happens and it's something broken and something that we actually don't want to find, but we've defined it as something to seek out based on the reasoning of a young person.
Yes. And the other thing that I find, and this really speaks to what you've just said, 8 or 9-year-old Jane had vulnerability. She must have, because to say those words and to understand that there are, beige relationships.
Right.
There are deep ones, and then there are very rare ones. She understood that. She was vulnerable enough to write a little poem about it. I remember reciting that poem to my mum, and she said, "Oh, that's lovely, darling." But that's all she said. And then she thinks it's silly, and I think chip, chip, chip. And all of a sudden, vulnerability left the room.
Right. And who knows what your mom heard in those moments? Like, did she hear something that just caused her to pause and consider all of her friendships and think, oh my gosh, my 8-year-old has a better handle on this thing than I do. I don't even want to go there.
Well, I think I've told you about Mum. She was 3 years old when she was sent to boarding school. And she was 13 years old when she first went to university in Melbourne. She skipped 4 classes at school.
Wow.
So she didn't have any friends. She never made a friend. She had no idea how to make a friend because she was never with her peer group. That's not lost on me either, because when I look at how important friendship has been to me compared to Mum, and I don't know that friendship wasn't important to Mum, I just think that she was unable to make friends because she was never with her peers. There was no role modeling around her. She was,
and then she couldn't model it for you.
Exactly. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. She couldn't model it for me, and so I was finding my way.
Wow. Jean, first of all, thank you. Secondly, how beautiful are conversations. Even for this podcast, our conversations are curated in a way, like we have something that's going to be a sounding board, but we have no idea where these are going. And this, I'm going to cry. Like, this feels like such a treasured, sacred conversation we're having right now. And I just want to thank you so much for being vulnerable, but also allowing me into this space and sharing it with people that will hopefully help them feel seen and heard and appreciated and celebrated as well.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this afternoon before we went live together to record this. And I thought, what is my takeaway from this that's always been with me since I was 8 or 9 years old? What is the takeaway? I think that the takeaway for me is that those words are my true authentic self.
Mm.
I hate the word authentic.
I
It's
know
been
you do. I was just going to say, I'm so proud
bandied
of you.
around so much. My true raw self.
Yep.
Little Jane, little 8-year-old, little 9-year-old Jane wrote that poem. And it might have even been my very first love letter to someone that I was looking for.
Right. Oh, it's so good.
So there we go. Isn't that a funny little thing? It's a
I love
funny
it.
thing that I have carried around with me all my life.
I have another takeaway.
Mm-hmm.
Our words are powerful. And if we all took 10 minutes to write down what we're looking for in a friend without dropping the pen, just writing, doesn't have to rhyme. We all can't be Jane Webster. Which it's so cute. I love it.
I was Jane McAlpine then.
Yes, you were Jane McAlpine. But it really interesting to see what characteristics we list in what we're looking for in a friend and how many of those do we possess.
Yes.
And how many of those are we looking for someone to model for us in a safe container so that we can grow into those characteristics as well.
True.
An interesting exercise. I'm gonna
Very
write. I won't write a poem because I don't think I'm clever enough. And I have a lot of to-dos before I go to France, so I'm not going to worry about it rhyming, but I will write what I'm looking for in a friend.
Okay. You write what you're looking for in a friend, and I'll write what I'm looking for in a friend. And when you arrive here next week, let's swap and read each other's out and use that as a springboard for our next podcast.
Okay. You're full of good ideas.
Oh, I know.
Hooray. Oh, I have loved this conversation, and I can't wait for our next one.
Conversation too, and I've loved sharing my very, very immature, childish poem with you. But I never actually have looked at it quite so intently, line by line. And it's really opened me up to wonder, whether that part of myself was closed off for a long time and is now open again.
Oh, it's beautiful. Open to wonder.
Mm-hmm.
That's gorgeous.
Loved it as usual, Wendy. And next time I speak, we'll be in Gay Paris.
Eek! I'm so excited. Thank you, Jane.
Bon voyage, and see you on the other side of your flight.
I can't wait. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We have loved this conversation and sharing this love letter with you, and we would like to invite you to send us your love letters. Visit the link in the show notes to send us your letters and to join our email list. See you next week.
Trust her words and let her wisdom show. Don't let your dreams fade away like a maybe. Life keeps rolling on and then it's gone.